Welcome back, all my fight fans, and today I'm going to be predicting every single champion by the end of 2025 in the UFC. Every single name that I list today will 100% be champion by the end of the year. My MMA math is infallible. There is no way I get any of these wrong. I'm joking, of course. At least half of these will probably be wrong by the end of the year. Some of my picks are kind of wishful thinking anyways. So I'm going to start with the women's divisions today. I'm going to start with the three women's divisions because featherweight just seems to be dead. Since Cyborg left, I don't think that division really exists anymore. So kicking us off with the 115-pound division, the strawweight division. I'm going to say that Weili Zhang gets dethroned. I'm going to throw a curveball here. This might be wishful thinking because this is one of my favorite female fighters on the roster, but I think Tatiana Suarez will be champ by the end of 2025. The reason why I think that is because I thought she should have been champ 4 years ago. Now, did she have a close fight where she almost won the belt 4 years ago? No, but she's been off for a few years due to a prolonged injury, and that time away from the sport has really sucked because I think she's one of the most talented fighters in the entire UFC, let alone the female divisions. She is spectacular. She's a great wrestler, and I think she has the tools to get it done. I wish she would have been champ like 4 or 5 years ago, like I just said. Maybe see her defend her belt like 10 or 20 times. Maybe not 20. That's probably a little bit out there, but it would have been cool to see her go on a run while she was kind of in her late mid-20s there. But now that I think she's in her 30s now, it's a little bit, gearing towards the end of her career. I hope she can just make a fantastic run, win the belt in 2025, maybe defend it once or twice in 2026, and we'll see where it goes from there. It really sucks that her career has been set back due to injuries, but I'm going to say that Tatiana Suarez gets it done and becomes champ in 2025. Next up at 125, the female flyweight division. I should probably pick something interesting here because Shevchenko is 36 years old. She's kind of getting close to the end of her career. She had that amazing trilogy with Alexa Grasso, which seems to be concluded. I don't know if they're going to do a fourth fight, although they could since they are 1-1-1. But I thought Shevchenko won 2 of those fights. I thought the draw was in her favor, but it ended up being a draw. I'm going to say that Shevchenko stays champ, even though that's a bit boring. But I just don't really see anybody else at 125 right now that really wows me. I mean, Firo seems to be very talented, but I think if she gets in a kickboxing match with Shevchenko, Shevchenko still has enough to get her out of there. So we'll see if that fight goes differently than how I just predicted it, but I think Shevchenko will still be champ by the end of 2025. Moving on to 135, the weakest women's division right now. You kind of have Pena and you have, Pennington, and nothing there really wows me except for Kayla Harrison. She is the only fighter right now at 135 that really blows me away, and I look at her as one of the elite female fighters on the roster. So I think Kayla Harrison will have the belt by the end of the year. I don't think anybody's going to stop her unless Amanda Nunes comes back or if Chris Cyborg somehow comes back to the UFC, which definitely won't happen. I don't think we're going to see anybody stop Kayla Harrison on her path to gold. She is just too damn good. She's got those 2 Olympic gold medals. She's going to submit everybody, I think. I don't think anybody's going to be able to stop her. So I'm predicting Kayla Harrison as champ at the end of 2025. Moving on to the men's divisions now. So at 125, I have a pick that is definitely wishful thinking. I don't think this is actually going to happen, but 125 is a very hard division to pick right now. It's hard to see anybody dethroning Pantoja, especially after how he dispatched Kai Asakura in brilliant fashion in the second round there, getting that choke in and putting him out. It was a fantastic performance by Pantoja, and I don't really see anybody dethroning him unless perhaps Figgy comes back down to 125. Maybe we could see an interesting fight there, but I think Figgy's going to stay at 135. And if there is anybody who I think that could dethrone Pantoja, especially on the ground, I'm going to go with Tatsuro Taira. Now, this kid's very young. He's only 24, 25 years old. He's about my age, but maybe that's why I'm picking him. But there's something about him. There's something special about Taira. Every time I see him fight, he brings that Japanese fighting spirit, man. He never gives up. The last fight he was in was a split decision. I maybe could have called it for him, but I probably would have went the other way. I think he did slightly lose that fight, but it was a very close fight, and that's his only loss. Otherwise, he's undefeated, and he's gone through everybody. I mean, not like names-wise, but the people who he has fought, he's dealt with pretty well because he is a phenom on the ground. He has some of the most creative jiu-jitsu I have ever seen in the history of the UFC, and that's saying a lot. Now, there's another kid also from Japan named Ray. I'm forgetting his name, but I'll put it up on screen right now. But the Ray kid is about 22 years old. He's a little bit younger than Tyra, and that's another guy who I think could possibly become champ. Now, I think he's a little bit too young to become champ right now. It'd be cool to see somebody break John Jones's record, but I think it's going to be a while till we get Ray kind of in the top 15, top 10. But I think a Tyra versus Ray fight in Japan in a couple years could be phenomenal. Both of those guys look like some of the most talented grapplers we've ever seen at 125. And if there's somebody that can maybe choke out Pantoja, I'm going to say it might be Tyra, because that kid is damn creative. But that's just my pick. 125 is a pretty... I don't want to call it stacked, but it's a little bit all over the place. You kind of have Pantoja head and shoulders above everybody else right now because he's beaten everybody in the top 10. But if there is going to be somebody that kind of makes a new name for themselves in 2025, I think it could be Tyra. If he bounces back from that fight, has a really good performance, he's already in the top 5, we can maybe see him fighting for the belt at the end of the year, and perhaps he can dethrone Pantoja. We'll see. Moving on to 135. For bantamweight, if you guys know me, you know who I'm picking. I think January 18th, Merab's going to get dethroned. And I think Umar Nurmagomedov is going to be champ for a long time, probably at least 5 years. He's only like 28 right now. Islam's about 33 currently. I think the next 5 years at bantamweight are going to be dominated by Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, there are certainly fighters at that weight class who can put on great fights against him. And he's not even past Merab yet, who's a very, very tall task. Not literally tall, but that's a tough fight for Umar. I think he gets through Merab. I think he gets through Peter Yan, even though Yan has amazing striking. I just think Umar might even be a better striker. We don't know, okay? We have to see it. But that performance against Sandhagen in 2024 really impressed me. The way he was able to piece up Sandhagen on the feet, a guy who I think is one of the top strikers at bantamweight. I don't know. I think Umar is going to be too much for the division. I think with his Dagestani wrestling, he's just going to get better and better at that. He's got amazing front kicks. He uses front kicks like a jab. He throws that teep right up the middle. He can hit you in the body. He can hit you in the chin. It's phenomenal how great this kid is at kickboxing. He's way better of a striker than Islam Makhachev or Khabib, and he's probably around their level for grappling. So he's going to be a menace. I think once Usman comes over, his brother, it's going to be them kind of ruling 135 and 155 for a long time to come. I don't think anybody's going to dethrone those guys. Now, Usman's not over yet, so I'll save that for another video, but Umar, man, I'm telling you, he's something special. We're going to see on January 18th if I'm right about this, but I think he's going to dominate 135 for a long time. There's some amazing fighters at 135. Don't get me wrong. And some of them I'm huge fans of, like Petr Yan, but I just don't see it happening. I think Umar's too complete. And when I watch him fight, I know he hasn't fought the biggest names yet, but when I watch him fight, he is absolutely flawless, and I think he's an improvement on Islam, who I thought was an improvement on Khabib, who, I mean, we know how dominant Khabib was, so that's who I have for 135. For 145, I'm going to stay with Ilia Topuria. I am so high on that guy. I predicted him to win the belt last year. I said that this guy is going to dethrone Volkanovski. This is going to be our new champ. Some people said, that's crazy. That's never going to happen. Well, look what happened. He knocked out Volkanovski, and he knocked out Max Holloway, who's never been knocked out before. In the same year, he decapitated 2 featherweight goats. And he's only 27 years old. His first 7 fights, he had 6 first-round submissions. 7 submissions in those 7 first fights. 5 different submissions he used in those 7 submissions, 7 submission wins. So this guy is incredibly dynamic on the ground. He can submit you. He's probably the best jiu-jitsu player at 145. He can out-wrestle anybody at 145, maybe with the exception of Evloev. I don't know about that one. That's the one that's still, that guy might have some problems for Ilia, but we'll see. He can out-wrestle anybody at 145. He can outstrike anybody at 145. His leg kicks are brutal. You see the leg kicks he landed on Volkanovski in that fight? He was just chopping his legs out right away. I think one of them even knocked Volkanovski's legs out from under him. And his boxing. I've said it before. I'll say it many times. Ilia Topuria is the best boxer in the UFC. 100%. You see the way he dips his shoulders. You see the way he throws hooks. The way he throws punches is beautiful. It's perfect boxing technique, and he has the mind of a boxer when he's in there. He's looking for that punch, and he's setting things up, and he's looking to counter you. Ilia Topuria is too much for anybody at 145, and if he moves down to 135, that's one guy who I think could give Umar some big problems. I think he should probably go through for 3 belts that way. Go down, claim 135, go up and do 155. Ilia was talking about doing 170 and 155. I think 170 is too much. Bilal's close-ish to his size, but if you're fighting somebody like Shavkat, that guy's just too damn big. Like Shavkat versus Ilia Topuria, I can't even imagine that fight in my head. There's just too much of a height discrepancy, and I don't want to be the one to count Ilia out because I've been the one, tooting his horn for the last couple of years. But I think Ilia is going to have an amazing career, and I think he's going to keep that 145 belt for as long as he wants to keep it. I don't think anybody's going to be taking it from him. I think if he loses a fight, it's going to be at lightweight, and it's going to be against somebody like maybe Arman or maybe Islam, or maybe one of those top names, but even then, he has a chance to beat those guys because he has that one-punch knockout power that we saw him put Max Holloway out cold with. That's never happened before. So, Ilia Topuria, my 145 champ by the end of the year. 155. Again, I'm going to be a little bit boring, but I don't think anybody is going to be taking the belt off of Islam Makhachev. Now, I'm incredibly excited for the January 18th fight between him and Arman Tsarukyan. I thought the first fight was fantastic. It's one of my favorite underrated fights of all time. It's getting talked about quite a bit now, obviously, with that fight coming up, but it's one of those fights that for years I would tell people, like, go back and watch that Islam fight with Arman because you'll see just how good this Arman kid is. And he's younger than Islam Makhachev by quite a bit. I think he's like 5 or 6 years younger than Islam Makhachev. So he was like 20 years old taking that fight on short notice when he first fought Islam Makhachev and took him to a close decision. I would still give 2 rounds to Islam, maybe 3. But he did make it a close fight. It was back and forth. The wrestling was much closer than you would think, especially for a Dagestani as good as Islam Makhachev. Arman gave him some problems. He even took him down maybe once or twice. So I think Arman Tsarukyan's the only guy who can really pose a threat to Islam Makhachev right now. Other than that, I don't really see Islam losing his belt at 155 to anybody. I think he's just too good. He's too big. He's too dominant. We just saw him outbox and outstrike Dustin Poirier, of all people. That guy, he outstruck and then choked him out in the 5th round. So I don't think anybody takes the belt off Islam. I think the only way he loses his belt or gets another loss on his record is if he goes up to 170 and maybe fights like a Shavkat Rakhmonov and just bites off more than he can chew. But even then, I think he could beat Shavkat. It's when you start talking about Islam versus Alex Pereira that I'm like, okay, maybe that's looking too big. But at the same time, I'm somebody who knows my wrestling. I know that Islam does have the wrestling to absolutely choke out Alex Pereira. And, I think Chimaev is probably a better fight for Alex Pereira. They're a little bit closer in size, but I'm somebody who's said for quite a while right now that I think Chimaev would decimate Alex Pereira and probably make it look easy. So Islam Makhachev, it's not the most out there thing to say that Islam Makhachev, standing at 5'11", 5 inches shorter than Pereira, could possibly beat him in a fight. But that's so many weight classes that you're climbing up. I know Pereira was a middleweight at one point, but man, going from 155 to 205 is too big of a jump in my opinion, and I don't think Islam should try that. If you're going to do that, then might as well just face John Jones at that point. Like he's the same height as Pereira, and like they're the same age. Like just go all the way to heavyweight, Islam, if you're going to do that. But I think Islam should go for the 170 belt, maybe the 185 belt. I think Chimaev versus Islam would be one of the sickest fights of all time. I honestly don't know how that one goes. I'm pretty certain that Islam does have the better freestyle wrestling, but I'm not certain because Chimaev has proven it on the Swedish national team. But Islam is in there with killers. I mean, he's wrestling with Sadulayev. He's wrestling with Olympic gold and silver medalists. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say who would win that. I'd love to see that, just a freestyle matchup in wrestling, period. Like not even a UFC fight, just Islam wrestling Chimaev. How does that go down? But yeah, Islam Makhachev, he's going to be the 155 champ, I think, by the end of the year. I really don't see him getting dethroned. So So we'll move on to welterweight. 170. I've hinted at this man a couple times before. I don't think Bilal, remember the name, I don't think that guy stays champ, man. He's 36. He won the belt off of Leon in a fight where he did dominate, but he lost a round and had 4 minutes of, Leon had 4 minutes of back control time in a round. Stuff like that just makes, I don't know. I don't trust Bilal to keep that belt. Like I said, he's 36. He's already comparing himself to GSP. This might be wishful thinking, like I want Bilal to lose, so that might be why I'm saying this, but I don't think he keeps the belt. I think he gets dethroned. And I think a guy like Shavkat, who's more in his prime, who I think is a better natural wrestler, I think he's also a better striker. I don't really see Bilal throwing wheel kicks quite like Shavkat can. I think Shavkat can get that done, especially the fact that he fought Ian Gary on a torn, MCL or ACL? Regardless, that's a horrible injury, and he still beat up Ian Gary. So, yeah, I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is champion by the end of the year. I don't think anybody else at welterweight really impressed me that much. Maybe in a couple years we could see Michael Moraes. Maybe Prates has a run in him. I don't know. We'll have to see how high in the rankings Prates can climb. But for right now, I'm going to say that Shavkat Rakhmonov by the end of the year will be champ. And remember the name Bilal will be out of here, hopefully. 185, middleweight. I'm kind of picking a lot of Eastern fighters, but you guys can see where my taste lies. I really, really like the Russian wrestlers. But I'm going to pick Chimaev, of course. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Dricus or if it's Sean Strickland. Both of them are getting absolutely mauled by Chimaev. What he just did to Robert Whittaker, if he's in that same shape, he's doing that to everybody. I'm telling you, he's doing that to everybody. I'm back on the Chimaev train. I know there was a couple years there where he was pulling out of fights. He had a couple close fights that maybe shouldn't have been close. His gas tank was a little suspect, but in recent months, we've kind of gotten information that he's had some pretty serious health issues that he was dealing with. He has issues with his son, and I think he's in a better spot now. He seems a little bit more calmed down, a little bit more focused. It seems like he's there to win the belt now. When he first came into the UFC, some of you guys might remember this, he had like 3 fights in like 2 months, and I think like 2 of them were like 10 days apart. It's ridiculous. He was fighting so often, and he was running through guys like a hot knife through butter. It was not even close. I mean, what he did to Gerald Meerschaert was just rude. That was rude. To knock a guy out with your first punch that's just rude. But the way he was going through middleweights was just insane. And I'm like, this guy is going to do this to everybody. Like, I'm not trying to like bolster the guy up or anything. Like, I'm watching what he's doing and I'm going, there's such a big gap here. He's going to do this to everybody. And I still think that way. I think Chimaev, I think he murders Sean Strickland in the first like minute of the fight. I don't think Sean has anything for him. I think Dricus can maybe drag it out, possibly get it to a decision, maybe, if he has like the best chin of all time. I don't know. But I seriously think Chimaev can ruin everybody's life at 185. I think he can move up to 205. I think he can decimate Alex Pereira. I think he can out-grapple and beat Ankalaev as well. And I don't even want to say that there's a ceiling on what he can do. Like, Chimaev is one of those weird guys where I just said something as crazy as he could decimate Alex Pereira, and some people are already in the comments going, you're crazy, Alex Pereira is going to knock him out. John Jones is my favorite fighter of all time, so I'm like the biggest fan of him. Like, I'll champion that guy till I die. I think Chimaev might have the skills to choke out John Jones. Like, he might be that good. I think he could choke out Tom Aspinall. I don't think there's a man on earth he's not going to be doing that to unless we actually see somebody stop him. Like, unless he gets in there with somebody, and I know this is like going in the other direction now, but unless he gets in there with somebody as dominant as him, as like a Khabib, like, I don't know who's going to be able to stop that force when it's on. Obviously, Chimaev versus Burns, Chimaev versus even Usman is a little bit of a different fighter, but that Chimaev versus Whittaker, I'm telling you guys, if that guy shows up every single night, there's nobody on earth that is stopping that. He is too violent. He's too aggressive. He's too good at wrestling. He broke Robert Whittaker's jaw. He had his teeth like falling out of his mouth. That guy is scary, and I think he's 100% going to be the champ at 185 by the end of the year, as long as his health stays intact. So Moving on to 205. Man, is it hard to bet against Pereira. I really don't want to bet against him because he is so damn scary and he's impressed me so much, especially in 2024, defending his belt 3 times, getting all of those by knockout. I think the last person to do that might have been John Jones in 2011. I don't know who's the last person. I think Chuck Liddell defended the light heavyweight belt 3 times in a year. That might have been the last guy to defend that belt that many times in a year. But man, Pereira's impressed me so much, and he's knocking everybody out, and nobody's wrestling him, but I don't know. I still think Ankalaev can do this. I still think that. I look at Ankalaev striking, and it's more dynamic to me. He has more tools in the tool shed. He has more weapons in his arsenal, in my opinion. The way I see him throw kicks, the way I see him throw punches, I just feel like he's more dynamic. He seems a little bit more fluid. I don't think he hits as hard, even though he is a knockout artist. I just, it's hard for me to bet against Pereira, but I think Ankalaev has the tools to get this done on the feet. And some people are saying, well, isn't he going to just take Pereira down and wrestle him? Like, isn't that his path to victory? Not really. Ankalaev isn't really a wrestling-heavy Dagestani fighter. Not everybody from Dagestan is wrestling heavy. I mean, look at Shara Bullet. He has, like, I don't want to say no wrestling. That would be an insult to him, but he's not a fantastic wrestler. He's more of a kickboxer. And so is Ankalaev. Now, Ankalaev can wrestle probably a little bit better than Shara Bullet, but he's not like a wrestling heavy guy like Khabib or Islam Makhachev is. He's more in the Umar Nurmagomedov camp or the Shara Bullet camp, where he likes to strike first. So I think, man, if he stays on the feet with Pereira, it's a deadly game, and very few have survived it, but there's something in me that's saying, Pereira's almost 38, Ankalaev's 32. It's Ankalaev's time. I think Ankalaev's going to be champ at 205 by the end of the year. So we'll see if that prediction plays out. I'm sure that's probably the most controversial one, especially after the year that Pereira has had. But moving on to heavyweight, the last weight class that we will talk about today. And I kind of hinted at it before. I am a huge John Jones fan. I've been watching him since I was 9 or 10 years old. He's the fighter that got me interested in training. He wasn't like the first UFC fighter I fell in love with. I think that would probably be Chuck Liddell, but he's the first fighter that like I championed as like my guy. Like, this is the guy who I was with on his rise up. I watched him win the belt. I watched him defend it 3 times in a year. I watched him do spectacular things, beating legend after legend after legend, doing it from a super young age, beating these guys in their prime, a couple maybe slightly past their prime, but the people who he beat during his prime were mostly in their prime. It's actually a false narrative that these guys were old. When he beat DC the first time, he was 27 years old. That is very young for a light heavyweight. So I've watched this guy's career play out. I've obviously been there for all the ups and downs, the failed drug tests, which I won't say is cheating, because a failed drug test is not the same as cheating. Some new MMA fans don't understand that, but a failed drug test does not always equate to a cheater. But anyways, we can discuss that in another video. John Jones is somebody who I've been on his team even when he was, hitting pregnant ladies with his car and beating his wife and all these horrible things. And, some people are like, well, why are you still a fan of that guy? That guy's a piece of shit. Like, you should turn your back on him. Why do you support that guy? It's like, I'm also a piece of shit. I do horrible things all the time. Like, I do evil things. I still do evil things. I try not to. I try to be a good Christian, but I do evil things. And I relate to John Jones. I see that as a broken human being who keeps fighting, who keeps building himself back up, and who keeps winning despite all of his flaws. And I relate to that. I don't really relate to the goody two-shoes, Wonderboy Thompson types. I was never like that. I was always a troublemaker. So I relate to John Jones. That's my guy. So I'm going to be a little bit biased in my selection here. Do I think that Tom Aspinall has the skills to knock out John Jones? Absolutely. He's faster than John Jones. He's got faster hands for sure. His boxing is more fluid. I don't know if it's more technical. I wouldn't say that, because John Jones' defensive boxing is elite. He has some of the best defensive boxing in the entire sport. You watch the way he evades punches, the way he posts. Posting is something that's used in boxing quite a bit. You don't see it as much in MMA, and then it's because of the fingers that he's been getting in trouble with his whole career. But John Jones is a fantastic boxer. I won't say that Aspinall's 100% a better boxer, but he does have faster hands, and he definitely hits harder with his hands. You just see how many first-round knockouts he has. He's putting people out cold. Jon Jones has never really been that way. He's been more of a kind of tune you up, maybe hit you with a flying knee and knock you out, or maybe knock you out with a head kick. But he hasn't been a guy who's like a one-shot with one of his hands knockout guy. So absolutely, Aspinall has the skills to get this done. He's also got the age advantage. He is in his prime as a heavyweight. Not even yet. He's not even in his prime yet. That's the crazy thing about Tom Aspinall is he's only like 30, 31, 32. He's in his early 30s. Heavyweights usually don't peak until they're like 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. Usually around 38 is like the last good year that you have at heavyweight, unless you're like a Randy Couture who can win the heavyweight belt at 45 years old. Like, that's an anomaly. Most heavyweights aren't built like that. I thought maybe Stipe was, but he didn't look as great as a 40-year-old Randy Couture did. So, you know, Aspinall's really young. He's kind of pre-prime. He's still got a long career left at heavyweight. And Jon Jones is 37. He's naturally a light heavyweight. He's not naturally a heavyweight. I know he built his body up over the last few years to become kind of a natural heavyweight, and he does look good at that weight class, but he's not a natural heavyweight. So there's definitely ways that that this favors Tom Aspinall. And I'll break this fight in greater detail when it eventually gets announced. But I can't sit here and lie to you guys and say that, you know, Tom doesn't have like a 50-50 shot at winning this belt. He definitely does. He's a very scary fighter. He's, like I said, in his prime. Jones is aging. But I'm going to take Jon Jones because of his IQ. I truly believe that Jon Jones has the highest fighting IQ of anybody who has ever lived in the history of the human species. I don't think you can look at anybody. I mean, you get, like, military tactics aside, like, I'm not talking about like Napoleon or anything. I'm talking about like fighters, like martial arts. I can't point to anybody else throughout all of history that has displayed a knowledge and an understanding of martial arts like Jon Jones. Now, I know some people champion DJ because he threw a guy in the air and threw an armbar on him. Is Ray Borg. Like, Jon Jones has never fought anybody as bad as Ray Borg, so chill. I don't think DJ is going to be doing a suplex armbar to Henry Cejudo. That's just not happening. But I know some people champion DJ, and he's definitely number 2. I put him number 2. I even put him over GSP. I put him over Anderson Silva. I think Demetrius Johnson has the second best fighting computer I've ever seen. But for me, it's Jon Jones. You see the spinning back elbows, the teep kicks to the knee. There's so many techniques that Jon Jones uses that only Jon Jones uses. And he has more unique and dynamic techniques than Demetrius Johnson does. And that's just a fact. If you watch their fights, you'll see more unique techniques from Jon Jones than you will from DJ. And I'm sure DJ will be the first person to tell you that. DJ maybe he's a little bit quicker because he is a smaller fighter with how he puts things together. But when you watch Jon Jones, he is methodical in making sure that he is expressing himself as creatively as possible in there. And I think that's going to be the key to him winning. Every time I see him fight, he finds ways to win. Even in his worst fight he's ever had against Dominic Reyes, I still think that he came back in that 3rd round, and I think he clearly won the 4th and the 5th. I think he came back in that fight and found a way to win it. And it's a beautiful fight to watch if you watch it that way, if you don't just watch it with a angry mindset of Jon Jones lost this fight. Like, if you actually watch it and see what's happening in the fight, it's a beautiful performance by Jon Jones. The way he comes back from a guy who was just relentless in the first 2 rounds, throwing everything he can at Jon Jones, literally relentlessly. There was no point in the first 2 rounds where Dominic Reyes was taking a breather or taking a break or calculating his next move. He was go, 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 go. And Jon Jones was just not ready for that. But he adjusted in the fight, and he won the fight. So there's these moments in Jon Jones's career where I see him do things that I've never seen any other fighter do before. And I've never seen that from Tom Aspinall. Now, granted, that's because all of his fights have been very, very short, and he's beating guys out of there quickly, which scares me. But I've never seen Tom Aspinall adjust in a fight. I've never seen him do anything creative. I've never seen him come up with a strategy adjustment mid-fight. That's never happened before. So I'm going to take Jon Jones as the heavyweight champion by the end of the year. I know I'm kind of spoiling my breakdown of the fight here today, but it's a fight that we're all excited for. We're all anticipating the Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall fight in 2025. It's probably going to be around International Fight Week, and it's probably going to be the biggest UFC fight of all time. And whoever wins it will probably be the champ at the end of the year, I imagine. Perhaps Jon Jones wins and then he retires right there, and then somebody else fights for the belt by the end of the year. But I don't know. I don't know how it plays out. I mean, Jon Jones could get knocked out in the first round, just like everybody else. Tom Aspinall encounters, and maybe that's how it goes. Maybe that's how Jon Jones's career ends, and that would be sad for me as somebody who's been watching him for 15 plus years. But yeah, that's where my heart lies. Again, I'm pretty biased. I'm a huge Jon Jones fan. Like I said, when I was 10, 11 years old, he's the fighter who really got me into training martial arts. He got me obsessed with it. I wanted to become a UFC fighter for a long time because of Jon Jones. And yeah, he holds a special place in my heart. I know some other people might not feel the same way, but that's how I feel about it. And those are who I have for champions of the UFC by the end of 2025. I'm sure loads of you disagree with me. And definitely let me know in the comments. Who do you guys have winning each of the belts? You guys can give me your guys' predictions of all the champions. I love hearing from you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. It helps boost this channel in the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.